Hello and welcome to episode number 351. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com, and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Welcome back. This is another episode in which I am proudly introducing you to one of my successful students who was able to pass the PMP exam. His name is Mark Chropufka, and he is a student of my Project Management Prepcast. I love doing these kind of interviews because of the in-depth knowledge that I can take from someone like Mark, who has passed their PMP exam, and bring it to those who are still studying for their exam. And of course, I also feel very satisfied that it was my exam preparation course that showed him how to prepare for the PMP. In this PMP Lessons Learned interview, you are going to hear him talk about his journey to becoming PMP certified from start to finish. And so, let's take the first step on this journey. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcast's feature interview.
Today with Mark Chropufka, PMP from the Greater New York City area. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the program.
Hello, Cornelius. Nice to talk with you and actually meet you for the first time.
In person,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, I listen to podcasts myself, and sometimes, you get to know these people and you have them in your head, and then suddenly you meet them somewhere. It's like, oh my God, I know you.
I know. True.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations for passing your PMP exam. Great success.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all your help with your product. Great product.
Happy to help. When did you pass?
December 31st.
Oh, okay. Only a little while ago.
New Year's Eve, yes.
Yeah. Most important thing first, if you had to do this again, is there anything you would do differently?
I feel that with the preparation that I did and all the reading and the reviewing and the courses I took, honestly, not really. I was very successful, and I just felt that the preparation and using the PM exam simulator that you offer made all the difference. Taking a number of practice exams made the difference, and I was very calm and prepared for the exam.
Is there anything you wouldn't do? Anything you would leave out?
Anything I would leave out? I basically say that not the worry. Basically, just making sure that sometimes you see horror stories on the lessons learned out in the internet.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people take that with a grain of salt. And also the other part is not to get frustrated. In the preparation process, you're going to hit points where you feel like you should be at a certain level. And for example, I was taking the PM exam simulator, and it would say that I was below proficient on a couple of areas, and I was like, wow, if I'm not performing, I should be, at this point, I'm already 2 weeks away from the exam. I should be well on my way. And really, I would say is don't get discouraged. Basically, use that feedback to focus on that area. That's where you want to focus your study and make sure you're up to speed on that particular weak area. And, it's not the real exam. So this is where you want to make your mistakes, and this is where you want to expose your weaknesses. And so that way you're prepared. When the real exam comes, you're not going to get that second chance. So make as many mistakes as you can, I would advise, obviously, and most important, learn from the incorrect answers and the mistakes that you make. That's the biggest lesson learned, my takeaway from the exam.
There are so many project management certifications out there. Why did you choose to go with the PMP?
I felt that, I've seen, as I was it's been about 5 years now, I have seen people in my career that have earned the PMP designation or have had the PMP designation, and they were getting upper management jobs, and I was curious as to what it took to acquire the certification. I had looked into it, I'd say, like I said, beginning about 4 years ago. And, I needed to acquire more experience at the time. I felt that, in my career, I needed more project management experience. So up until, I would say, about a year ago, I looked at the credentials again. I went to the PMI website, and I felt that my experience had, I'd become a manager several years ago. And I felt that now I was ready. And I started looking at the credentials that were needed, and I applied. And basically, PMI responded back, actually audited my application, which again, I understand that's a random process, and I provided
Yes.
all the documentation. Basically my supervisor, my current supervisor, my former supervisor were more than happy to support what I had written, and I showed them everything, and it was very seamless. I provided my certificate, my course completion certificate, and my graduate degree. And basically PMI cleared me to take the exam, which I did in December. Just a note about that is I think it was in October that I actually got clearance to do so. I was surprised that when I went on to the website to actually schedule, there were no dates available until I think late December. So, and obviously the exam was about to change. So I was curious. I wanted to make sure I completed my examination before that change occurred. So.
Yeah, and I just by pure coincidence, about half an hour before we started our interview, I was looking at the latest PMP statistics, and I saw that in last year there were 55,300 and something. I don't remember the exact number anymore, but over 55,000
Wow.
new PMPs.
Wow.
Right? So it is not surprising when you say that you were in October trying to get a seat and you had to wait until December.
Right.
There are so many people getting this certification at the moment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And again, I was going to the Prometric Center that I have actually taken other exams before. I had taken a graduate GMAT and other graduate exams some years ago. So I knew the center, and I was familiar, and it was closer to me. So I actually didn't reach out to other centers, but that particular center, there were very few dates available. So that's what I ended up going with. I ended up going with December 31st. It just made the most sense.
Right. Okay. And here's the correct number, 55,297.
Wow.
That's the number that, according to the official PMI statistics I have, between December 31st of the previous year and the December 31st of the last year.
Well, I guess I was in there. I was in that group. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. So let's come back to the audit quickly, because you said you were audited. When exactly did PMI tell you you are being audited?
As soon as I submitted payment for the exam to apply for the exam, as soon as I did that, it was funny because I had put together my application early. I was going to say it was probably in February, because actually I'd taken a Learning Tree course, project management through Learning Tree.
Yes.
And I also did not apply for my PMP exam credential. I didn't go. I wanted to study, obviously, but the other part is through my employer, they offered to pay for the exam, but you had to apply for a grant to get payment. And to do so, you had to have it approved first. So that took some time. So I couldn't initiate that activity until that approval came through, which it did. So that delayed me actually applying for the exam till several months later. I think it was probably, like I said, I didn't end up actually paying for the credential. I think it was like late September, actually. And that's when I ended up getting the final. And it did take quite some time because there's a lot of documentation and paperwork that you have to submit. But thankfully, everything was approved. And once I received the go-ahead from my employer, I ended up applying for the exam. And that's, of course, when I got the notice that I was going to be audited. So I had to get all my paperwork together. Obviously, the hardest part was, reaching out to the supervisors, and they were great about it. That's the most intensive. Obviously, I think the other part is just making a copy of your Learning Tree certificate, which I had, and your diploma, your master's degree or bachelor's, whatever you have. But obviously, I just did my MBA. And the longest part, like I said, you fill out a form. Your supervisor who oversaw the projects that you were working on, they basically sign off and attest that, yes, you did, in fact, do this project and you performed the duties as mentioned. And that was it. Once I submitted it, I would say it took about a week, probably about 7 to 10 business days. And it's funny, it's odd because you get an email from PMI saying that we're reviewing your credentials, and then like a second later, it said you've passed your audit, you've successfully cleared your audit, you can take the exam, like literally like seconds apart. So I don't know, I guess, you don't really, which was good. So you didn't really have that much waiting time, between the two emails. So that's when I went to apply for my exam at that point. So
All right. We know you passed on December 31st. When did you first say, yeah, I'm going to do this?
I would say at the end of September, I was.
Oh, so it was between September and December, really. But wait, before that, at some point you had to decide, I'm going to apply for the grant, I'm going to take all the classes. Was that in September or was that earlier
Oh,
than
no,
that?
that was actually in January of that year.
Okay.
So in January, I guess to give you a little bit a better timeline, in January, actually, as part of my performance evaluation, I actually chose to undertake going for the PMP certification. So the first step was actually signing up for a learning tree class, which was eventually held in February. That was paid for by my employer. So that was the first step. And once I went through the class, obviously I wasn't completely prepared for the exam. There was definitely a lot more time and preparation that was needed, but at least I had a baseline and I knew, okay, I had the fundamentals of the PMBOK guide. So at that point, I said, well, if I'm going to entertain actually sitting for the exam, I really, and obviously I did sign up. I did become, once I got approved for the grant, I did become a member of the PMI, and that was very helpful. As you get a free copy of the PMBOK guide, you also get access to other electronic resources that will aid you in your exam preparation. So I did that first. I think I ended up doing that sometime in June, I think was when I officially became a PMI member. And as I said, I think I officially got the grant like in May. And then in June, I became a PMI member. And then there were a couple months that passed. I had some personal things going on too over the summer. So that basically, I kind of curtailed my preparation a little bit. But once, I would say by September in earnest, I was really studying for the exam and I was ready to finally go ahead and actually schedule the exam. And that's when, of course, I got the audit notification.
Hmm.
And I felt that, okay, by the time, I actually do schedule the exam, I'm going to give myself, I would like to give myself at least a month or two. I was going to say at least 2 to 3 months between scheduling the exam and actually my prep time. I didn't intend that when I went to schedule it, I guess it was the October. I didn't intend that I would have a date out into December. I thought I would have some dates in November. But as I said, I guess people, it was just a popular time. Everybody was trying to take the exam. And I ended up choosing December 31st, and that gave me ample time to prepare and get myself ready for the exam. And I'm glad I waited. I had that, gave myself at least I would say 3 solid months to really prepare.
Could you have done it sooner? If you had a date in November, could you have done it sooner? Do you think you would have had the same success?
I honestly think that I probably would have passed, but I would definitely have been a lot less prepared. I would have been a lot more nervous. I think the key preparation was taking those. I wouldn't have been able to take the number of practice exams that I was able to take, and
Hmm.
I think that really made a big difference in. From November to December, there was definitely a noticeable improvement, and I felt a lot. I really started. What I find with the PMBOK and with the entire PMP process, it's a process. So I found that I didn't really gain that understanding or that really good, solid, fundamental overview until I worked with it. And you really have to, and I find that you can read the material, you can really, you can go through, you can memorize things, but you really have to understand how everything works together. And you really don't get that until you really spend a lot of time with it and going through doing the practice exams exposes where you're weak. But as you go back and you retool and you keep reading, it starts to come together and you really understand, especially like looking at the ITO for the different processes, and you really understand how the processes work together. And I think that's a fundamental truth or a key to really mastering the exam. And I did not memorize all the ITO, but I had a very good sense. And also using the PMBOK guide and the numbering system of the PMBOK guide, I was able to let's say knowing that integration, project, chapter 4, you have all the processes under integration. Using that numbering sequence, it helped me kind of like numerically put everything in order and kind of figure out, okay, well, how one process led to another and how they interact with each other. That took a lot of time, and that honestly, having that extra month, I'm glad I ended up not getting the date in November and waited, because I was really, when I went into the exam, I was surprised. I just was so calm, and I really, I was, again, it was an exam. I knew what to expect, but the preparation definitely made the difference. I felt, I also was breathing, deep breathing. Actually, when I did my brain dump, I spent like the last minute, like sort of doing like a little meditation. And once I jumped into the exam, I felt very calm. It was a weird feeling. It was great. And I just, again, I was on par. I went through the entire exam. I just had to, unfortunately, by the last half hour, I had to go for a bathroom break. But I was fine. I had plenty of time. I gauged my time. And that, I will say to anybody doing the exam, I would say plan to have less time for reviewing questions or taking breaks in the actual exam than you do on the practice exam. I just found that on the real exam, you just have less time to stop for breaks. And I think it's because you're reviewing the questions a lot more carefully than you are on a practice exam, since you know that it is a practice exam. And also, too, you have more familiarity with the practice questions sometimes after you've been using the simulator. Whereas with the real exam, you're seeing it for the first time. So I would say that I think where in the practice exams, I might have had an hour left over. In the real exam, I probably had I'd say about 30 minutes of spare time left over to go back and review the questions. It was kind of tight. And to incorporate a bathroom break. And again, when you actually, with the exam center, it's almost like you're checking into an airport. Basically, they scan you. They have you pull out your pockets. They have you empty, pull out your shirt pocket. They and all you're allowed to, and they actually wand you with a scanner, and they actually only allow you to bring in your driver's license or your ID or whatever ID you're going to use. My case it was a driver's license. They give you like a pencil, and they give you exam paper. And also they gave me heads, I guess, what do they call it? Earplugs, and the silent headphones, which I would highly recommend. That's, if you can get that is
noise canceling headphones?
Noise canceling. Yeah, they actually had both, which was great.
Oh, okay.
I would highly recommend that because you're in the exam. When you're taking the exam, I've been in both situations where I was actually taking the exam. You're with other people that are not just taking the PMP, they're taking a variety of different exams, and some are actually using a keyboard, and it can be really distracting, especially when you have people shuffling in and out, in the course of the exam. That can definitely be distracting. But having the headphones is a lifesaver. It really allows you to focus in and concentrate. And the cubicles are pretty good. They kind of have some noise canceling ability, but definitely recommend earplugs. They provide them to you, by the way. At least my center did. They provided a choice of the noise canceling headphones, the earplugs, or both, and I chose both. So.
Yeah, and this is maybe the moment when we have to say that, no matter what you expect to happen at your testing center, something will be totally different. I hear the strangest things. Every testing center around the world should be using the same procedures and everything. And I hear the oddest things. I hear things from testing centers. They only gave me one piece of paper. Mm-hmm. In another testing center, a student was told, you are not allowed to get up. As soon as you get up from that chair, your exam is over.
That's ridiculous.
Right? So he could not take a bathroom break for the whole time. He couldn't get up and take a breather. Wow. He had to sit there all the time. So, Murphy's Law, expect the unexpected for the exam. And that's the moment when you yourself, you have to, do a deep breathe and go, this isn't important. The only thing that's important right now is that I pass this exam. That's what I need to focus on. The fact that they're only giving me one piece of paper, what the heck? Okay, I'm gonna use micro writing and just write it very, very tiny. I'm not allowed to go up and go for a bathroom break. Okay, then in that case, I'm going right now. Give me 5 minutes, I'll be back. Right? So these are the kind of things you have to work with them, and it's your exam. You want to succeed. Don't let anything get to you at this point.
Right.
That's really important.
And logistics, you should know, I knew where the restroom thankfully was really close, but I scoped out where it was immediately, as I was coming into the exam center. And, I did actually, in fact, go to the exam center a few days before to park. Obviously, it had been many years. I hadn't been there in probably about 15 years. So it actually, I think it did change. It wasn't on the same, I don't think it was in the same location, or it just didn't look familiar to me. But I ended up finding, I knew exactly where it was. When I got there, that will definitely help relieve some stress, that you know where you're going.
And about a week ago, I saw another lessons learned from a student on our website. And she said that, when she first heard about this, go to the testing center, drive there a week before. She's like, yeah, whatever. But she still did it. And she said, oh my God, thank God I did this.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where the testing center was. I had driven past there several times, but I haven't driven there at the time when my exam was.
Sure.
During rush hour.
Right. And by the way, parking was limited because they were doing construction. They blocked off a good portion of the parking lot. So I ended up having to park like towards the back, I guess, or, initially.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So it was good.
So go there a week before. And I mean, by a week before, if your exam is at 9 o'clock in the morning and you want to arrive at 8:30, drive at exactly the same time.
True.
In a week from now, I'm going to leave for my real exam, so I'm going to leave now. I want to see what this is like. So to adjust. I know this sounds really silly, but having that safety net and knowing nothing is going to go wrong on my drive because
them.
I've done it last week.
And call
that
them.
is just helps you be calm.
Yeah. Call the exam center too. Just ask them, do they have earplugs? Do they have noise cancel? They told me, yes, we do. We have that. And also they were actually it was a really, I will say they were very professional. They did a great job. It was a very comfortable experience. Again, every area, every place is different, but they were very professional and they were very helpful too. They said also too, but bringing your ID, you may need to make sure your ID has your signature, your photo, and your name exactly as it appears, and your address. Make sure that it matches whatever you applied when you applied for your PMP. So if you move, just keep that in mind. It has to match. They're very strict with matching the ID to when you actually go to sign up for the exam. They want to make sure it's you. So that's important. The driver's license had all that, but if you don't have that, I think if you don't have your signature on it, again, in New York it has, but if you don't, you're supposed to, I think, a credit card will suffice, but just keep that in mind. That's important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me take you out of the testing center and let me take you back all the way to February, because you said you took a class from Learning Tree, right?
Correct.
Was that a project management class, a general class, or was that a PMP prep class?
That was a PMP prep class that actually provided the credits that you need to actually apply for the exam.
Okay. So there was a lot of time between the prep class and you actually in earnest starting to study and also starting, and getting the exam date. I assume you forgot a lot in between.
I did. I was reviewing sporadically, but yes, I did forget a lot, and I did have all my notes from the class. And what I did, one of the techniques that I used is I made sure that I went through each chapter in the PMBOK. I read it and I did a review questions from the chapter. Actually, I think there's a little guide that comes with the PMBOK. I'm trying to see if I can grab it. It's called Q&As for the PMBOK Guide 5th edition. It's put out by the PMI. And it's a little mini spiral-bound book, and actually it corresponds to the PMBOK guide, and there's review questions. So what I ended up doing is at the outset, I basically would go through each chapter, then do the review questions and see what I did, and again make notes of what I got wrong, why I got it wrong, try to understand why I did, and then proceed to the next chapter and keep going. But I tried to pace myself. And I ended up doing that. And again, at a certain point, once I got through the chapters, that's when I started to take at some point, I started to take the practice exams and the practice quizzes. And that is really where I started to identify a lot of gaps. And again, what ends up happening is you will review the chapters and you tend to it. Unfortunately, you have to go through it several times in some cases because even though you may have done a great review, let's say a month or two, 3, 4 months before, you forget the material. And actually, that's what I had started doing when I was in, I guess, after the class. I would say probably about March, April timeframe, I was starting in earnest because I was expecting to have this grant and everything come through, but unfortunately, it didn't. It took a lot longer. So I it ended up delaying my studies a little bit, because obviously there was delay and there was also some other things that had come up during the summertime. So, I had some family, had a couple of relatives pass in my family. So that delayed some things as well, but again, as you were saying, there was that time and there is that decay and you do need to go back. And again, taking the practice quizzes identifies those areas. So expect to go back and review areas several times. You're definitely not probably going to get it on the first time. I noticed when I was doing the EVM formulas, I think there's a page in the PMBOK that lists out all the EVM formulas, and I was overwhelmed. I was like, there's no way. How am I going to memorize all this? Or how am I going to understand and get all this? And I was like, it was overwhelming at first. But honestly, I took my time. I would say it, write it, read it, and then I started to see the commonalities in the formulas. And before you know it, like when it came time for the exam, I knew it cold. I knew the formulas by heart and I knew why. I wrote a few of them for the dump sheet, but I knew most of them and I knew why and when to use certain, for example, the EAC, ETC or EAC formulas. I knew when to use them. So it's just practice. And it's like I said, you just have to stick with it and continually practice the material and you will get it. It's going to be frustrating though, because it's overwhelming. That's what I found when I came away from the project class, from the learning tree class. I was overwhelmed. It moved very fast, and it's very difficult to keep up and get it on the first go. And you shouldn't expect to. You should just try to absorb as much as you can and try to just roll with it.
Yeah, there's really only one way to eat an elephant, right? And that's one bite at a time.
Correct.
And it's the same thing with the PMP exam as well. There is so much that you have to know and learn and study and be prepared for. The first time you look at this, it is completely overwhelming. I agree. That Q&A booklet that you mentioned with the spiral bound, I believe, I know the version from the third and fourth PMBOK guide. I don't know the one for the fifth. It seemed to me that they were relatively straightforward and simple questions. They weren't really situational PMP-like questions. They were more questions that checked whether or not you understood what the PMBOK guide had said. Is that still the case?
I would say yes and no. There were a few situations. They were definitely not on the quality of the exam simulator. They're more, like you said, they're more conceptual type questions, but some of them could be tricky. Mm-hmm. It's a good starting point, but I will say that definitely the exam simulated questions are a better quality and yes, more situational. They kind of give you like it's a good first start in looking at the questions. I will say they're not bad, but yes, I would say the exam simulator questions are a better quality.
Okay. So you had the PMP class from Learning Tree.
Yes.
You read the PMBOK guide. You used the Q&A booklet. Did you use any other printed materials? Did you have any kind of PMP prep books?
I actually there was a free ebook from Edwell Programs written by Richard Perrin. They actually just released a newer version for the updated PMBOK for the new exam. And it was an excellent book. Actually, that was sort of my ancillary secondary study guide, along with the website edwarddesigner.com. Edward Chung had put together his PMP notes, and he really did a great job at outlining all the key concepts for the exam. And his notes were sort of like a starting point. I did my own. And what I ended up doing is when I took the exams, I would basically go through and actually make my own notes. I would take screenshots of the actual questions that from your exam simulator or other exam simulators that were out there. And I would basically, I would take photos of, take pictures. It would show the explanation. I would write in my own words what the concept was that I was missing. And that was a starting point. So that helped a lot. The Edwell programs also had chapter test, and Edwell his guide is very good. Programs, but Perrin's guide is very good. The questions were probably a bit harder, I guess, than the real exam, or they were a little trickier. But it's a good guide. It's a good secondary guide. I know there are other ones that I heard of. I just never got around to. I guess there's ones from Andy Crow that I think I briefly saw a summary of one of them. Rita Mulcahy, I guess, is the way you say it. I saw a video of hers online. I actually went to YouTube as well, and I saw a lot of great videos. There were Sir Gantalot has a great series on earned value management, and he explains how to use. I think he explained he had a great video on earned value management, drawing the curves, the S curves, and also the point of total assumption. He explains how he derived those formulas. I saw videos, of course, from yourself. You had some I think you had some sample questions. Your explanations of the exam and what to expect were great. So that helped. And these were free videos that were out there. All you do is do a search on YouTube. There were countless others that I saw, explaining how to tackle the questions, what concepts to prepare for. They're varying quality. It just depends what's out there. But if you just do a simple search for PMP exam, you'll find a number of different. That was one of my resources that were out there. And of course, just doing a search on the internet, there were so many different sites. I mean, I'm just trying to think of some of them offhand. There was one called the Wisdom Pearls. But I would say Edward Designer's site had everything pretty much. It had all the sample exams that were free that are out there. There was ones from Exam Central. There was another one from Edwell Programs has a free exam. There was also Oliver Lehman has a free exam. I felt Oliver's questions much more difficult than the actual exam.
They are. You can't get any more harder questions than Oliver's.
Yeah, but I did well. The way he words them though, I actually did reasonably well on the exam. I didn't find them too bad, and I got where, and I would recommend to anybody that's studying to try to do different. Oh, there was another one from Eisenbridge, which was out there, but I'd recommend do a variety of them. And on my iPad and iPhone, I had downloaded. There's a number of free. You just put in for PMP, and again, there's many paid versions from the App Store, but you can get some great exam simulator questions for free. And there's a lot of great apps for PMP preparation, which I also used. And so what I would do is when I was in bed or I was, taking a break or, whatever, I was just downtime, I would actually go on the iPad and actually I would go through and do some of the sample quizzes and everything. And that helped a lot too. Sometimes it can get overwhelming, and there's some days that you're going to find that you just kind of get burnt out from studying. So, and you can get very frustrated too because you're not doing well. And I would say in your preparation process, you have to learn to take a break. That's another key point, and not get too stressed out. You have to step away from the material sometimes. That's another key words of advice that I would give anybody preparing, because that I found you can get very overwhelmed. Like you said, there's so much material. You need to step away from it and come back to it tomorrow sometimes.
Right. So you mentioned my exam simulator a few times here. And so, full disclosure here, this is a premium paid exam simulator that we have, pmexamsimulator.com. You mentioned a number of other tools, free questions, free exam simulators that you've used all over the place. Why did you still decide to purchase a premium exam simulator?
Basically, once you do the free questions, you basically will end up running out of question banks. I mean, there's so many out there, but the quality of the questions, sometimes it comes into question. And I came to your exam simulator, I was reading recommendations, and I ended up doing the free trial version, and I liked the quality of the questions were good. And most importantly, not only the questions, but the explanations would give references to the concepts and where that concept was in the PMBOK guide or where it was coming from. So I think it's really important that not only when you're taking these exams, you definitely should do the full length exam under the test conditions. And I found that I was running out of sources to get like a full length exam, and I saw there was a good offer. There was actually an offer where there was a discount to acquire the exam simulator questions. So I went for it, and it gave me access to, I guess, about 9 full-length
1,800 questions. Yeah.
Right. So I ended up saying, you know what, I really wanted to, I really said this would really get me ready. Because I liked the free version. I said, I need to do more. So I ended up making a goal to myself to actually sitting down. I would take a weekend. I would go through a full-length exam under the exact conditions, no breaks, making sure that this was the real thing. I would lock myself where I am now at my desk, close the door, and actually take the exam under the true test conditions. And then after it was done, the most important part of the process, which the exam simulator aided, was I was able to go back and not only get the results, but review each question that I got incorrect and actually take a screenshot of it and see the explanation of the question and why I got, not only, okay, I got it wrong. And some would just show, okay, well, you got the answer wrong, but why? That's the most important. You need to know the why. And I was able to easily screenshot that and make my own notes from that. And then, again, the statistics, your simulator also banks a lot of the statistics. So you can go back and see your progress to see how you did over time. You can see, okay, well, I took this exam. This is my first test out. You could also take it several times, and you can see the statistics over time. Personally, I just took each exam once. I didn't want to do a second time because I felt that I wanted to see the questions fresh. So, but you can see your progress and you can see what you got wrong, and then you could always go back through. So once you go through the review, you can go back again. And again, not only see the questions that you got wrong, but also another key is to see the ones you got right. You can go through to make sure you understand why you got it right. You may have gotten lucky and guessed. And there were cases where, you know what, I was looking at a question, I really wasn't sure. And I looked at the question, I was like, that's why it was right, or that's why I got it right. And it really helped me kind of confirm or understand better why, I got a particular question correct. So that's important too. Any questions that you mark or unsure, you need to understand why you got those correct if you did.
One feature that really distinguishes our simulator is the live feedback that we offer. So when you look at a question, as you review it, and you're wondering, you're scratching your head, you're going, I'm reading this, but I really don't get it. You can press the, leave feedback, and you leave feedback, and then a real live PMP will get back to you and answer your question and discuss the situation with you. Did you use that? Was that helpful?
Actually, I didn't realize I did leave feedback, but it was post-exam. So I didn't realize that you could do it and to get real-time feedback. That I didn't know. I did actually receive a response. And what it ended up happening is the exam itself was running on a fast timer. So what ended up happening, it actually really pushed me to finish the exam. So instead of being a 4-hour sample test exam, it actually finished in 2 hours. And for some reason, the timer just sped up, and I'm not sure why.
There was some kind of a bug, and we just simply said, this is now a feature.
Right.
It forces the student to do things faster.
So it really
it's been fixed in the meantime.
So it really pushed me, and so I had brought it up, but I did not know that you could get actually real-time live feedback. I did not know that.
Wow, that's the number one feature that really so few people know about. If you click leave feedback, there is an actual PMP behind it who will read your feedback, who will get back to you, who will discuss it with you, who will help you. I think we have to put that better on the website and let people know, hey, there's actually somebody here.
So it's actually in real time. Actually, you'll get somebody back.
It's not real time. It's just a live person in the background.
Oh, okay.
So it creates an email in our ticketing system, and usually within 24 hours they get back to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I did receive the feedback. They were very good about getting back to me, but be interesting too. Maybe if they had like a chat feature, that's available that you could.
Yeah, if we do a chat feature, then there is only one problem. Instead of having a relatively inexpensive exam simulator, you're going to have to pay me 3 times as much because we're going to have somebody there 24/7. Just sitting and waiting until somebody wants to chat.
I think the feedback is good. I think you can, like you said, you can provide the feedback, but once that person comes back to you through email, that it would be nice to have like where you can reach out to them through chat. I actually ended up talking to Jonathan by phone, when we were following up, because but initially the response was, I think it was just a miscommunication, but it was like, okay, yeah, that's a feature, and the ticket's closed. I was like, well, wait a minute, no, and I didn't mean to jump on it, but I was like, wait a minute, no, it's not closed. I mean, we didn't fix the issue. The issue is still there. I didn't, nobody had, and Jonathan had said, well, this is a very rare issue. I said, oh, well, nobody said anything to me. I didn't know how infrequent it was or what it was, but he kind of clarified, and it was just like I said, I was fine, once we understood. And not only that too, I was also in the throes of getting ready for the exam, so I was like, I was like kind of probably just stressed with that, but I was really, I said, no, the issue is still not fixed. It's still there. It hasn't gone away. It's still there. They haven't fixed it, but don't close the ticket yet. I just want to make it known, because if it comes up again, it's there.
Yeah, and I can tell you now from my side of the story. During our daily meeting, there are 3 PMPs that serve 4 actually that serve this community. Jonathan brought it up, and we were discussing this for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. This is important when we get that kind of feedback from customers.
Right.
We just don't blow people off. We stand behind these products, and if we get an error like that, it's like, why could this be? Is this a browser issue? Is this actually an issue with the simulator? Is this something that's our fault? Is that the student's fault? And, here's the thing. Even if we know 100% it's not our fault, the issue is very likely on the student's side. That doesn't help the student. Right? Then we're digging deeper. Then we're trying to figure out, okay, where could the issue be? Is he using an older type browser? Is he doing this on an unapproved device?
Right.
Why is this happening?
See, I didn't get that follow-up. That's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
I just basically got, okay, we recorded, again, I don't have the original email, but basically we got the issue. Okay, we're closing the case is the way it came across. And I don't think it was meant to be that way. But then that's what threw me off. And I was like, well, wait a minute, there's more to the story. It's not fixed yet. But anyway, subsequently, I actually took another exam, and I didn't notice the issue again. And then when I talked to Jonathan more, again, obviously talking by phone helped a lot. And also when Jonathan clarified it, I was like, okay, great. Now that adds more color to it. But the initial response was so short, and I was like, you closed the ticket? But I was like, no, it's not. Okay, I said, if it's fixed, but let me know that it's, what the more color on it and why it's fixed. But that's not what happened anyway.
Here's something that you'll see, on all projects. Communication is key.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. This is about as close as I can get to asking this in an ethical way, because you are not allowed to discuss your experience on the PMP exam in any kind of detail.
Right.
So if you compared the question that you used from our simulator to what you had on the PMP exam, would you say that they were equal, better, worse, that they helped you prepare? Where would you put it?
I would say they're on par with it. Basically, to be honest with you, I don't even really think I remember the questions. It's actually, to be honest with you, the actual content, I don't even remember. It's almost like it's poof, it's gone after I took the exam. But I will say that, I will say when you look at people, when they talk about in the lessons learned, when they say that there are situational questions, there are calculation questions, that is true. I mean, I would say that if you go through the PM exam simulator and you follow the process of not only taking the exams, but doing the conscientious review of understanding, I really, and again, obviously doing the preparation of reading the PMBOK guide, but getting that understanding, I don't see why you will fail the exam if you make a honest, conscientious, if you really understand. And I will say that, like I said, if you're doing well on the PM exam simulator questions and you're scoring an 80 on the first look on the questions, the first go, not the second or third. Again, these are questions that you've seen for the first time. I think you're fairly well prepared for the exam, for the actual real PMP exam. But again, you really have to, as you said, you have to be calm and being in the right state of mind to take the exam. You really have to, you can't be panicking and you can't be nervous. And the preparation, taking the exam simulator helped with that. You don't feel nervous. You don't feel panicked when you're in the actual exam, because that's no way to focus and take the questions and get to the questions. Oh, One other thing I will say, feature to add to the simulator, which I think would be really helpful and a really easy fix, is to put in a calculator, like a button that brings up the Windows calculator. I think that would help. Or, make a note that you should really use the Windows calculator on your computer, because in the actual exam, that's what you encounter. You actually are given a button. I think they actually tell you that you're going to get a button. That actually helps, because I've heard people say that, God, I didn't know that you have to do like the Windows calculator. You have to actually use like a Windows, I think they said it was a Windows XP calculator. Personally, I didn't notice I guess it was just a regular Windows calculator. So you have to do your calculations using that.
Exactly.
But I would say your simulator is fairly close to the actual real exam content as far as, the format of it.
Was there a topic that you encountered on the exam that you hadn't prepared for?
No, I would say everything. There are some odd questions and the phrasing is weird, but again, those could be experimental. But no, everything was. I felt that I touched upon everything that I was presented with. I wasn't surprised at all.
Mm. And was there anything that you studied where now you'd say, you know what, studying this particular area, that was a waste of my time?
No, I really don't feel that at all. No, I think again, I would say that you definitely have to have, in one shape or another, when I guess the best way, and again, every exam, I'm sure the questions that you get, every PMP exam is different for people. You don't get the same questions, but I would say that you really have to have that. I guess the key is you have to understand how the whole framework, how the how the PMBOK, how the framework of project management, according to PMI, you have to understand how that works. And I think by not studying a particular area, I think you're shortchanging yourself. You're kind of missing out. And what's going to end up happening is, you may get lucky and you may miss it. But what ends up happening is when you encounter those situational questions, having that understanding behind you when you've studied the framework, you're going to be able to interpret the question a lot better than somebody that's basically just trying to barely get by. I don't feel you could probably do it. I mean, I'm sure, I can't say that there would be a minimum study time, but I think you're really setting yourself up for unnecessary heartache. I think you're better off over preparing and spending the time to go through the practice exams and really study and understand, because why make life difficult for yourself? It's not worth. I felt, to me, I'd rather go in being confident and fully prepared and relaxed and calm. And again, you're more likely to incite panic by not preparing, and then you come across a question that kind of throws you for a loop, and it's like, and then that's the other thing too. That also helps. The exam simulator helped me with my question pacing. It helped me pace myself to see where I was at and how, if I was not only build your endurance, but also make sure you can get through. Because I'll tell you, after a while, after like 100 questions or 120, you really start to get tired. It wears on you. You really have to, and you really know, not only, I ended up taking the exam in the morning because that's my peak time where I do my best. And that's another thing I would be cognizant of, is know when your peak time is, when you do your best work, because I'd recommend scheduling the exam around that time. That helped me a lot, because I think had I waited till, let's say, the early afternoon, I really would have been in trouble. You basically start, I probably would have done it, but it would have been a lot more difficult. So I would say no, nothing in particular was a waste of time that I felt. I think everything was important.
You mentioned it's important to understand the framework and everything around it. There are two documents that I always recommend to my students that they read. One is the PMP handbook, which sort of outlines the administrative side of the PMP exam. And the second document is called the PMP examination content outline, which contains all the tasks and topics that will be on the exam. Did you read either of those two documents?
I think I skimmed. I skimmed them both. I think I didn't. I did go through the tasks of the examination content outline document. I think I did actually skim through both. I would say that what helped me a lot was, I guess it's page, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 61, or where they actually.
Yeah, it's table 3-1 of the PMBOK guide,
Right.
I believe,
I
right?
think that is a good starting point.
Yeah.
That if you can not, I would say not only basically rattling off where those, all those 47 processes, but I think if you can, I found, like I said, I just did it by number, knowing the numbers of each, and it kind of relating it back to where the chapters in the PMBOK, they also, what the way the PMBOK is organized, all the chapters fall, by the process numbers, right? So 4.1, 13.1 is stakeholder management, 13.1 to whatever, 13.4, and so forth. So I would say that once you can, the first step, I guess, is memorizing, and you can basically write out those processes. But when it really get to where you understand is when you start looking at those processes and you say, you know what, I get the flow. And I think another helpful graphic in the PMBOK guide is where they show, and again, they relate the plan, do, check, act, where they show that iterative nature of how the monitoring and planning are, that circular process, that you understand that a lot of processes, the planning processes, how they interact with the monitoring and controlling, how there's like this interactive flow and how one relates back to another. I think that's important to understand. But initially, like I said, it's very important to know, okay, when you're, when are you're in the initiation, you're developing the project charter, you're identifying stakeholders, to know that comes before you're developing the scope statement, that type of thing. That I found very important and very helpful for preparing for the exam and also for the questions, to understand that. That's just one example. But understanding the sequences and the sequence of when you do a certain thing, when you control scope, when you're using a particular, you're using variance analysis as a tool and technique in control scope, why, and understanding where that occurs. Once you start getting that down, I think you're in really good shape for the exam. You start really understanding. And again, it just took me time. I wouldn't say I was an expert at it, but I felt really confident about it after time. And again, it just took time just working with it, and not panicking.
Yes. Yeah. And the table that we're referring to, folks, in PMBOK Guide 5th edition, it is on page 61. It is table 3-1, Project Management Process Group and Knowledge Area Mapping. Now, this thing that moves around in every PMBOK guide. It's somewhere else. But I think in PMBOK 3, 4, and 5, it has always been table 3-1. So hopefully, if you're looking at PMBOK 6 or 7 or 8, or whenever you may read this or listen to this interview in the future, it's probably still, and hopefully still, table 3-1. And talking about the future, Mark, you have prepared for and passed this exam based on PMBOK 5. Let's say somebody is listening to this, 10, 15 years from now, and they're using PMBOK 8. Is your experience generally still applicable?
Definitely. I would say another note in preparation. Don't forget to read the earlier chapters too, the 1, 2, and 3, because that gives you a lot of framework and a lot of important concepts leading into the actual processes themselves, understanding the organizational structures. I would say yes, that it's probably going to, when the person that takes PMBOK 8 or takes the exam at that point, it's probably going to be a lot more complex, but I think the key is to understand the framework and how it works, understand what's going on, and really, you can apply it to your own real world examples. But I think it's very important that when you approach the exam, you try to think the way the PMI thinks and the way they organize the information. And you should try to use real world examples. I think it's also important to, when they talk about a project charter, try to see what an actual project charter looks like, and also to understand the concept of rolling wave planning. That was a very important concept that came up, progressive elaboration, those concepts. And also the iterative nature, the way the whole planning, the process planning cycle works. I think that's a very important graphic to understand how this whole, and again, also to note that planning is actually the biggest at this stage is actually the biggest part of your processes. That's the most important. So I would say definitely approach it, take the exam seriously. Don't try to rush through it. Really take your time to understand the framework and how it comes together. You can't really rush it. You have to develop an understanding, and that takes time.
Let's stay in the future. Now that you're a PMP, what's next for you?
I am going to continue on. I definitely continually want to learn a new. Again, I just finished the Agile Prepcast that your company offers, and I want to keep up learning more about project management. I find it very interesting. I was learning, concepts about. I was learning about Scrum and XP programming and Kanban, and actually, it's funny because I have a business background, so some of these terms I actually remember when I was going through for both my MBA and also my bachelor. So some of the material kind of echoed back to when I was going to school. And I remembered some of the things, like some of the formulas, standard deviation, that type of thing. But I would say that the project management is an evolving and always growing. It's always growing. So I definitely feel that I need to keep learning. It's not something that I'm going to stop and that's it. I don't want to learn anymore. No, I want to keep it's constantly evolving, and I'm really looking forward. I really want to get more involved in doing events like this. I really want to give back, and I really enjoy it. Like, I've done some videos on how to prepare for the exam. My first thing, I just wanted to share my experience with people, because I felt this sense of, I was very nervous, and it was great to see there's so many resources and so much information out there that people freely give away to help people, to help people like me that were preparing for the exam. And it really helped me relieve a lot of the nervousness, and it really made me a lot better prepared. So I want to give that back, and I want to keep, I love opportunities like this to learn. And again, ultimately, I think what it comes down to, what the best part of this whole process was learning. And that's something, it's almost like, for me, it was like going back to college again. It was going back to school. And that's what I enjoyed probably most about the entire experience. It was a chance to learn something, learn a whole new framework and a whole new processes.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are preparing for their PMP exam?
I would say definitely read the PMBOK, definitely go through it. But most importantly, make sure you have a game plan. Most importantly, make sure you do full-length practice exams. Review the practice exams to understand why you got questions correct or incorrect that you were not sure of. And basically, be patient with yourself. Don't get frustrated. It's a process. It takes time. You need to give yourself at least a couple of months. You should give yourself at least a few months to prepare. Again, everybody's different and learns and acquires the knowledge at different paces, but you need to be patient, and you need to give yourself the time. Make the time and take the exam seriously. Don't shortchange your study. Work. But if you do the work and you prepare, you will pass.
Mark, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cornelius. It was great talking with you.
And that was our interview with Mark Chropufka and his lessons learned of becoming PMP certified. If you too are a project manager who wants to become PMP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the Project Management Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching the in-depth exam prep video training from pmprepcast.com. And that's it. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. Whenever you set out to do something, something else must be done first. Until next time.